So this is the first time I've hosted a meeting like this, and I kind of hope to do it again. Our presenter today graduated from Florida State University with Bachelor's in Science, Bachelor of Science in English Education. More recently, studying full stack development at Lambda School. His experience includes Node, React, Redux, Postgres, and languages like JavaScript, Python, SQL, HTML, and CSS. So everybody please help me welcome Cris LaFortune. Cris, take control.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. I'm gonna share my screen because I've got a little slide deck. Awesome. All right, so as Clinton said, I graduated with an education degree, and for the past couple years, I've been working as a teacher. But I recently graduated from a coding boot camp, and I'm looking for a career change to become a software developer. I'm from Tampa, Florida. I went to Lambda School, and I'm looking for a front end or full stack role. All right. So right now, I'm working for the Department of Corrections as an educator. I created a computer literacy curriculum for some of my older students who didn't really know how to type. So I was teaching them basic computer skills. I've presented about that curriculum at statewide conferences, most recently at the Florida Literacy Conference last year. And I inherited this computer lab that had years and years of like PowerPoints and worksheets, and I created kind of a dashboard or like a directory of all those files using HTML and CSS. And I kept wanting to add features to it, like finding a way to embed the PowerPoint in that little web page. And before you knew it, I was learning JavaScript. And, you know, I liked it so much that I started doing free code camps, responsive web design curriculum, and decided to take it even further and went to Lambda School in 2020. And graduated last month or 2 months ago in February. And about a couple weeks later, started working for them as a technical project lead. And this is kind of a like teaching assistant position. I've got a team of 10 students, and we have a data science team and an iOS team, and I am helping them through the capstone project for the bootcamp. It's like an 8-week group project. They're working on a web application that compiles a bunch of data about different cities. Stuff about like housing and weather and like basically the city's characteristics so that people can do some research if they're looking to move. So I made the Trello board for this project, and I'm helping with like project management and keeping everybody on track. Our project is actually due on Wednesday. So after I leave here, I'm going to jump on there and help them get this done. Also doing code reviews with our GitHub repos, making sure everything's up to the standards. I've helped my teammates troubleshoot technical problems in React and Node. And I also assisted with deploying the backend of our API to Heroku and the front end website to AWS. So some of the skills that I picked up over the last year and a half or so, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, specifically Node for backend and React for the front end, and also learned a little bit of Python as we went through the computer science portion of the curriculum. So, gonna briefly talk about some of the projects that I've worked on. So for my capstone project, it was an app called Pet Express, which we redesigned an existing web application using React, Ant Design, and styled components for styling. I designed a landing page and I made the application mobile friendly. And this improved the user experience and kind of just streamlined the flow of the website just a little bit. I provided some links, and I'm going to ask Clinton to maybe share this out when he posts the recording later. So these are the wireframes that I designed. I kind of planned out what each page was going to look like, and then I implemented these designs using code. So this was the landing page. Obviously, this would be for the desktop, and then that is the same page on a smaller screen. And then this is what those pages looked like once we got into the code. So you can see that we got the little mobile navigation menu up here. And also wanted to show you what it looked like before I inherited the code base. The footer was kind of floating in the middle of the screen. Everything was all bunched up, but I used CSS and Flexbox to get everything where it was supposed to be. I made that navigation system that the links change from like whether or not you're logged in, like the login would become a logout button when you sign into the application, that sort of thing. Also wanted to showcase a backend project that I worked on. This was a project called DevDesk. I created a RESTful API for a help desk application using Node, Express, and Postgres. I created user authentication using JSON Web Tokens. We created endpoints for two different types of users. There's one user that can just create tickets, and then the other type of user could go in and mark them as resolved. And we also created unit tests for this application using the supertest library. But throughout the backend curriculum, I also worked with Jest, which is another testing framework. And for front end, we did React testing library and Cypress. So here's a quick example of what those tickets look like. It had an ID for each ticket. You could tell when each ticket was created, and then there's a timestamp for when it was updated because we made an endpoint to edit tickets. This ID was for the user that created it, and then there's another ID for which user closed the ticket and resolved the issue. And then the user could input some information when they created the ticket, like the title, a description of their issue, a description of what they tried, and a category. And then there was also a status, which is this. That's sort of whether or not the ticket's resolved or not. So if I were to go back and like make this better, I would probably make that a little bit more descriptive and make it like a true or false instead of a 0 or 1. And this is an example of a test for that create ticket endpoint. So we use that testing framework to create a ticket, and then we're expecting that ticket to show up as created once you send that ticket object through. So some challenges that we faced while working on this project. We had some trouble deploying to Heroku because this was my first time using Postgres. So we had to like deal with some of the intricacies of setting up the database correctly. Also dealt with some issues with cross-origin resource sharing. That is supposed to prevent malicious people from sending malicious data into your database, but sometimes it can be a little bit too good at its job, and it was preventing our front end from interacting with our back end. So we had to fix some settings there so that the application would work. And lastly, we were trying to create a logout endpoint on our back end, but we were using those JSON web tokens for authentication, and it is pretty convoluted to expire those tokens from the back end. So if I were to come back to this project and try to like revamp it, I would probably use sessions instead so that it would be easier to expire that ticket so users could log out. Or I would use a third-party framework like OAuth or something to just make that a little bit easier. All right, so that's pretty much all I prepared. Does anybody have any questions for me?
What specifically were you facing with Chorus? And by the way, man, I've been in this game for 20 years, and I still have some choice words for Chorus from time to time. Chorus is never really cleanly, and different server-side technologies have different quirks about it, different versions of web servers. So I'm just kind of curious, what was the specific issues that your team faced, and how did y'all solve it?
It was a no access control allow origin header. I was so mad about it, I wrote it into my test as one of the issues to be resolved. Obviously, I tried Stack Overflow, Google, Prayer. It just took a lot of troubleshooting to fix it, to be honest with you. Like you could see in the commit history, me just like tweaking the settings until it worked.
Yeah, hi Chris. Good work. I had a quick question.
Sure.
As a person who is also typographically challenged, not the best touch typist in the world, what were you able to implement to specifically overcome the challenges that those folks faced with not being obviously brought up during a time of computers and learning to type in high school like we did?
Oh, sure. So we use a lot of the Mavis Beacon Teaches Typing program. That's one of the very few pieces of software that we have on our computers. I also just kind of created lessons around different technology concepts that they probably wouldn't be familiar with, like, how to apply to a job online, because, most of these people are going to be going back out on the street someday, and the world has changed so much since they've been, away from society and internet and all that good stuff. So one of the things I did is like kind of introduce them to what LinkedIn is and like show them how to fill out a job application online. We also have a like piece of software that kind of simulates how an online application works. So that's helpful for just like getting them used to filling out those boxes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Chris, I have a question about the choice of the super test library. I'm not familiar with that. I'm not sure if that's node specific. Well, first of all, kudos for actually writing tests. And my question specifically is, the unit test framework, discussions sometimes go long between teams in the early stages. So what drove you and your team to like select super test library? What about that particular testing framework library stood out to you guys?
Um, just personal preference, to be honest with you. We could have used Jest or Supertest, and we just went with the one that we preferred. I'm not 100% sure if it's node specific or not. That's a good question. It is an NPM package, though.
Chris, I'm glad Forrest brought up testing. That's been my bread and butter for most of the last 7 or 8 years, until very recently. So I have a few questions, and it's going to be test specific, like um, creating mocks and cleaning up after your tests if you did integration tests, that kind of thing. Was there a lot of time spent being careful about the test data?
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
So to test a system and be sure of what it's doing, right? You need to understand the system under test, and the data kind of needs to be in a known state. Um, so you have to know what is behind your test in order to know that the actions you've taken within those steps are then the correct actions to be taken on that data.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, we did have to do some like cleaning up after ourselves because once you write tests to create something, like when you run your testing script again, it's going to try to create the same piece of data, and then it might give you conflicts there. So I did have to, as I was writing these unit tests, kind of rewrite some of them as I went so that they would be unique and like throw the codes that they're supposed to throw. That's a really good question.
Okay. Yeah. Again, like I said, I've been doing it for about 7 or 8 years, and I have a little bit more experience with the cleanup and such, so that yeah, we can write tests without being worried about the data. We can, when you're doing unit tests, of course, you mock all of your endpoints, and that way you're not actually using real data. And when you do integration tests, most of the frameworks for testing do provide a cleanup method. Therefore, they clean out the database and you start fresh every time you run that test. That would be something that could perhaps be an area of study going forward, is being able to automate the entire system from, run the test, clean up after the test, and that sort of thing, I would think.
Definitely.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? No? All right. Chris, thank you for presenting for us. And I want to thank everyone for coming. Again, these times where it's really difficult to get developers together in a meetup type situation, it's difficult for people who are new to begin to be a part of the community itself, and that's what we're trying to do here. I know Forrest from Nubits has some things to say, so I'm going to let him close out the meeting.
Yeah, I figured the only thing I have to say is good job, Chris. I enjoyed the presentation, and I don't know if everybody knows, but at least on my LinkedIn posts, I kind of offered some prizes. So we're gonna give away some Udemy courses. I think we selected a course basically on just clean code, which is pretty much language agnostic. So I think it's just a good course just on teaching you how to, write good code like in a professional setting. Clint, I don't have the random attendee generator on my computer. Do you have it on yours? You're on mute if you are talking back to me.
I was on mute. So let's see if I've got everyone here. All right. And we run it. Be 7. So I'm bad with names on good days. So let's see if Tamzidal, please correct me on that one.
I'm sorry, guys. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Sorry about that. I was just getting some coffee. So I'm actually a student of DevOps. I just learned basic Python. I also got my entry-level Python certification. And I'm also in school at Caltech during the weekend, building CI/CD pipelines using Jenkins, deploying Docker containers on Kubernetes clusters, and doing Ansible configurations. So things like that, just getting my hands dirty. I've done some volunteer work at an organization called Doing Good. Done some Terraform coding, deployed some Docker containers on AWS. So it's pretty fun for me because I've never done this stuff before. I actually come from a network and systems background, and so I'm looking to kind of get into the DevOps area. Yeah. So I just joined when I saw this on LinkedIn.
Okay.
All right. So
is he the first winner, Clint?
He's the first winner.
Okay.
The first winner.
Thank you.
First ever winner. Got it.
All right. So I'll get the contact information together after the meeting. Next person up is Rafa. Rafa here? Yep.
Rafa's here.
All right, Rafa.
So,
there we go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Forrest, for posting this on LinkedIn, Clinton for hosting, and Chris, congrats, of course, man. Really cool. I'll probably hit you privately on LinkedIn. I'm a recent bootcamp graduate myself. Launch code LC 101. Anybody know that? I'll try to. Well, you look me up on LinkedIn. You can show it, but it's a nonprofit organization. So we did like 6 months. It was online this time. Normally it's in person. And we did a unit 1 with JavaScript and some frameworks, a little bit of HTML, CSS, reminded me a little bit of like Chris's program. And the second unit was C#, like .NET. And then like touching a little bit on like RESTful APIs and whatnot. So I'm a baby here, and I'm really a baby. I'm just like starting, like excited to get into an apprenticeship, and also terrified of a technical interview. And I know how little I know. I just don't want anybody else to tell me or like turn me down because I know little.
All right. Congratulations. Who's the last winner?
Thank you.
All right. The last one, I really hope I don't get this name wrong. Bob Hunt. Hi, Bob. Tell us about yourself.
I'm from Indianapolis. I spent 21 years in the mutual fund industry and always wanted to. I never finished my college degree, and I was like, I want a degree. I didn't want to go back to 4-year college, and coding has always been something that was in the back of my mind. I left my comfort zone, went to the Kinsey Academy, which is like a coding academy. It's 12 months. I learned JavaScript and React and Node in the front end. First 6 months. Second 6 months was Python and Django. I'm eaten alive with imposter syndrome. My instructors keep telling me, it's like, you know more than you think you know, and I'm learning that. I'm starting to believe it. But like Rafa, the technical interviews are just like terrifying. But yeah, I'm in the process of applying to companies right now, and I've gotten through like 3 of the cultural interviews. And the next step, if they liked what I had to say, is going to be the technical interview. So I'm like practicing like crazy.
Yeah, Bob, the imposter syndrome hits us all, especially when we start talking to our peers about what we know and don't know. There's so many different areas that you could specialize when it comes to writing software and just being involved in the technical community. And you don't know everything. Your best thing to do is know what you don't know, and try not to step outside of that range, except to grow. If you don't know something, find someone who does, talk to them about it. I think the community is pretty open to sharing. So we've just got to fight the imposter syndrome and the shame of not knowing, because none of us do. Everything is outside of our realm. So
yeah, you got the first part down too, is being willing to say that you don't know, which is which is a really difficult thing. So you got, so that's awesome.
all right.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
advice. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank everybody for coming in again. I'm not sure what I want to do at this point. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording, turn the eye off of us, and let everyone talk as they wish. I guess we're down to the last minute here. So recording